Hi, Uri Barash. Welcome to the Humans of AI. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here.
So for everyone listening, Uri Barash is the Group Project Manager for Azure Data Explorer.
Indeed.
We're going to be talking a little bit about that in a couple of moments, but this podcast is called The Humans of AI for a reason, and the reason is I'd like to hear your story, a little bit more about you. But yeah, again, we are at Microsoft Ignite. This time we are lucky enough to have got a quiet room. So hopefully the audio comes out good. Uri, so to get started, how did you get involved in tech? Where did your journey into tech begin?
Oh, that's a great question. People have their tendencies, and I've been like building things, taking things apart and rebuilding them since I was very young, and it was very apparent to me that I will end up in engineering, some kind of engineering. It wasn't clear if it's going to be aeronautical engineering or mechanical engineering, because this is what I knew. But when I ended up going to the university, I started with electrical engineering because it was the most unknown field for me at that time, and probably presented also the most opportunity. After actually very, very quickly, I figured that I preferred software over transistors, so I switched over to the computer science version of that degree, and I have not regretted it since. It was a very good journey. Like in the middle of school, I heard about Microsoft opening a data center in Israel, and I just went down there and knocked on their door and said, how can I work with you? And
Round about which year are we talking here?
This was 93.
Okay. Well played, very well played.
So naturally, they took my resume and never came back to me. But after a year, there was this kind of a fair in the Technion, the university I went to, and I interviewed again, and I started working there as an intern, working on Microsoft Exchange. It didn't ship yet, but at that point, we were trying to move it to from the current database that it's running on to a new and modern database. It's still running on JetBlue, the same database that it was running on then. Probably evolved a lot since then. But no, I started working as an intern. It was a great eye-opening experience for me. When I graduated, I looked for a new role as a full-time engineer in the company, and gladly I found a person that was just returning from the Microsoft headquarters to Israel, and I joined him as the first team member in his team, starting working on information retrieval, which was a completely new field for me. I liked and I thought that natural language processing would be an interesting thing.
So when was this? This
was 96.
So you're thinking natural language processing 96?
Yes.
Wow.
And we started working on that then, and we've built this mechanism for inverse query. We thought that people might be interested in knowing things about the world without the need to search for it actively. Just have the content that interests me come over to me. That was
So a text recommendation engine in 1996.
Yes. And the thing is that we incorrectly believed that it was about the challenge of listening to all the internet and bringing the relevant content to you based on some kind of a definition of interest. I worked on that for quite a few years practically until 2003, 7 years. And what we and in the middle, in the journey, we created a prototype that was able to handle like millions of queries running on the full internet, like change feed at that time, with exotic hardware that we purchased for that purpose alone as part of Microsoft research, actually. And we worked to find like how do we take this to public, and we ended up like shipping this as SharePoint alerts in SharePoint 2001, 2003, and that was a great learning. Like taking technology from research to product, what it means to ship it, like how do you what are the challenges in taking such a technology and shipping it? It was still on-premise software at that time. And the biggest learning that I had, which is very related to the subject that we're talking about here, is that we ended up understanding that people are not willing to author and to manage their interest definitions. Because we relied on...
So what do you mean by interest definition? Is this going back to your original
like a query,
research?
like a definition, like full text query that will bring you information in that area. Mm-hmm. And we made it available for people to define what they care about and get the feedback. But what we found out is people are not willing to manage that. They're not willing to author those queries of interest, of what actually they care about.
So author them correctly, like in the right...
Correctly, and change them as the content changes and the volume changes, etc., like tuning them and making sure that they don't get like noise and false positives and spam, etc. And our biggest conclusion was that we need a component that automatically generates what you care about. And that was a big undertaking at that point to go after. And we decided that a better approach is to probably reduce that investment and start thinking about like other things. So we closed that team. It was like already a pretty significant team of like 12 people at that point. I ended up being the manager of that team, and then we decided to close that team and go and try other things. At that point, I moved on to security. And in security...
So again, just timeline, when did you decide
This is 2003.
2003,
2003. Cool. And I moved to security and started working on the Microsoft firewall at that time. And switched over to the product management. Until then, I was an engineer, a software developer, and software developer lead. And then I switched over to product management, especially because of the learning that, like, understanding the user pattern and understanding the user needs is crucial to how we spend our development efforts, how we spend our research efforts, to make sure that we are building the right things from the get-go. Because that learning was a very expensive learning over quite
the learning of developing that
like how people would consume this, like thinking upfront, how would people experience that capability. So in security, I started in like firewalls, but then quickly moved to security analytics, working on a project that involved like distributed analytics of petabytes of data. Even then, 2004, 2005, organizations were already generating about like 35 petabytes of like log data a day.
Can you not to name names, but can you say the genre of the organization that was generating so much data in 2004?
Not specifically, but like all major Fortune 500 were doing like this collection, and they were trying to say like, we have to understand what's going on, and for the purpose of security, am I doing well? Am I not doing well? Am I being hacked or not? I spent quite a few years on that, like building security analysis and shipping the forefront client protection and then the forefront analytics suites. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I decided to make a change and moved over to the Microsoft headquarters in the States, working on those products over there. And that was another super interesting experience.
So for those listening, You based in Israel. Well, you were based.
I started in Israel and then
Israel.
relocated to Redmond.
Okay, so I think this is an important point to try capture. How did you find the cultural shift from Israel to moving to the States? So around when we are still in 2004 here?
Yes, 2004.
Okay. Yeah,
exactly.
So how did you find that? Ignoring obviously all the stuff that was going on at the time, just literally the cultural.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome question. You can separate the answer for two things, like how do Israelis work and like US work and US people work, and how is it to be in a satellite development center and how is it to be in the corporate headquarters?
The beating heart
yes,
of the organization,
exactly. So I think that these are two different things. The development center in Israel was actually created by people that already worked in headquarters and brought a lot of the culture back. So a lot of the engineering culture was very, very consistent. What was very different, still on the personal side, is that the feeling in the Israeli headquarters was kind of like a family. It was a very close-knit team when everyone knew each other and they knew their spouses, they knew the other people's kids, and the feeling was very, very connected. Also, because it's a small site, the changes in the team were actually much slower. People left less often.
Okay.
And I'm working with people from that time. So that's
Interesting.
Incredible. On the other hand, like the Microsoft headquarters, there is a huge. It's huge, and there are a lot of teams, and people move between teams very often, and that's one of the strengths of the company. But it also means that the cohesiveness of each team is not as strong as I used to. So that was one of the interesting differences. It still provides a lot of value. The fact that people are moving between teams, between domains, it's a huge learning experience, and it creates a consistency across the company, which is an incredibly important thing to that question. So when I was practically done with dealing with big data, and I didn't know it was called big data then, but when I was really
things unnamed for a while, yeah.
When I was done doing big data on security and how to do distributed analysis and reducing data.
You're doing distributed, when was this? 2005 now?
It was 2005, 2006, doing distributed analysis and trying to reduce data by scoping, by creating assessments, by creating investigation capabilities on security data.
Can I ask what sort of algorithms you were using at this time?
So we came up with a program that said it wasn't like specifically AI and algorithms like that, but we came up with a distributed approach that said there are multiple ways to reduce the loads of information. One method is aggregation, like just counting things. And that's very useful when you're trying to get the status of where things in, how are my machines deployed, did I patch correctly, things like that. There is also the scoping capability, saying now I'm looking at this incident in these days, and I want to drill into that thing. That reduces the information significantly. And another one, which was the essence of the platform that we were working on, was assessment. How can I derive a conclusion from a set of things? And what we've done is we've pushed down the responsibility for the domain knowledge of generating assessments on the security state into the different technologies, into the firewall, into the intrusion detection system, into the endpoint protection system, into the hosts. So
what did you mean by pushed down there?
We actually required them to build a logic of
and them being
the different security products that comprise the enterprise security landscape.
Awesome, thank you.
And then we create a bus for assessments So we only dealt with the high-level assessment, like this machine is, like we practically moved the domain from talking about like the login details or the file in the anti-malware system to talking about like enterprise object. Is this user compromised? Is this machine compromised? Is this like enterprise asset at risk? And once those assessments come into the general assessment bus, it's much easier to do analysis on top of that and present a meaningful picture to the enterprise admin. So that was still brute force in many senses, but it's starting to build the principles of how to do big data analytics. At that time, I went back to Israel and looked for the new challenge. And
Again, what? To interject, just when did you go back to?
2008.
Yep.
2008, I went back to Israel and joined a company that was doing AI and microsegmentation in the advertisement environment called Azure Data. And that was another interesting learning because that was a startup that Microsoft just bought. And I joined that team.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go.
What inspired the transition back to startup land? Did you just want something new? Did you want to explore?
I think it was more of a personal change. That this is like we knew that we were going to the US, to Redmond, to Microsoft headquarters for a fixed period of time, and we definitely wanted to go back. You know, families, friends, parents, etc.
Right. Cool.
So this was mainly driven by personal reasons.
Yep. Okay.
And you know, I've made a lot of connection, like living in the States.
Oh man!
Even this week, I've met like about 15 of those people. Yes, so
it's fantastic. Yeah.
So the interesting experience there was how to take a startup, which was like much wilder, I would say, than than the typical Microsoft culture, and bringing it over into Microsoft, maintaining the talent and maintaining the spirit of like fast-moving company with a lot of creativity. And that journey, actually, they came into like Microsoft Audience Intelligence, that became Microsoft Advertising, and we were doing like display advertising at the time, and creating automatic matching between users and ads and automatic segmentation of things. And we also worked in the area of privacy and how to generate like user visibility into what the information that we know about. We built the Microsoft first privacy page that reflected to user what are the things we knew about them. And at some point, this team was actually merged into what was going to be Cortana, like a couple of years later. And and switching from advertising to Cortana, that was actually a very natural fit, because Cortana, one of the flags that it had back then is about like user data and knowing the user and matching the user experience to optimizing for the specific user based on all the things that we knew about. Doing it in a way that preempted GDPR in a sense. So what we did in Cortana, we said like, you know, everything that we know about the user is for the user, and the user must be in full control over everything that we know about him and how it is used in order to serve him better. And all the things that now we see with GDPR, the ability to delete data, the ability to control data, the ability to be forgotten, and even to contribute and say like, oh, these are the things that I do want you to know about me. And these are the usages that I want you to take this data or not take this data. So when GDPR went out, Cortana was already GDPR compliant practically with GDPR.
That's kind of handy.
Yes, it was actually pretty useful. There were always stuff to do, but I think that other players in the marketplace had to make much more significant changes to how they think and work in order to be like truly GDPR compliant. I'm not sure like everyone like fully adopted the spirit of like user control and user privacy and user ownership on those things. And there's a lot that I could talk about probably 5-6 hours only on that subject because our world is changing and
It is.
computer systems in many senses know about us more than we can even fathom, like to what depth. We've done some really interesting things. For example, like we were capable of predicting where you're going today and with very high predictability, etc. So that was a fascinating project. I can talk about like 4 hours. As part of Cortana, we actually did a lot of like.
So you joined the Cortana team. You guys have merged into Cortana. So you're in Israel or back at Redmond?
No, in Israel. That was in Israel.
So you became part of the Cortana team in Israel.
Yes.
So you guys were collaborating.
It became the Cortana team because this was actually when we launched Cortana as a company. We also organized the team this way.
So part of my ignorance on this.
Yes.
But Cortana was developed in Israel.
Cortana was developed. Some of it was developed in Israel. Some of it was developed in India. Some of it in China, and some of it and a lot of it in Redmond.
Impressive, man.
It was a very interesting thing also from organizational point of view because Windows and Office and Bing all came together in order to make this motion come to life. It's also one of the reasons that it evolved the way it did, but it was a huge collaboration across all the company, across all the teams at Bing, across the teams that Bing had in India, in China, in the US. So that was a fascinating project in many, many senses.
And again, just to build the story, which year are we talking?
We're talking all the way to 2016.
16. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so 2016. And in Cortana, we've done a lot of machine learning and AI, building prediction algorithm, building classification algorithms. And we ran into a technology that was just starting at Microsoft, which was called Kusto, which was a way to deal with huge amounts of data and interactively query it and derive insights from it. And the engineering team fell in love with that. So when it was time for me to do something new, that was a very interesting next step to take the experience that I had from security, big data, from personalization, from advertising, from information retrieval, and apply it to taking that technology to market. This is what I'm doing today.
So there's a lot, you just brushed over it there, but there's a lot of experience you would have had from everything you've done. You could take, okay, and that would have probably benefited the team massively. So something I picked on there that I don't know is, what is Kusto? I think it was called Kusto?
Yes.
Yep.
So
I'm not familiar with
Kusto was, we launched it last year, exactly a year ago in Ignite 2018. It's called Azure Data Explorer today. And this is a big data interactive analytics engine that's specialized in analyzing fast-flowing streams of information and make them available for query in incredible performance. We can query over billions of rows of data in less than a second. Data that was only generated a couple of seconds ago. And this has been a wild journey, getting the incredible Microsoft machine to take this to market, work with customers, and spread the word within Microsoft and also within the full ecosystem of big data and AI. Now we are doing with Azure Data Explorer, we're doing a lot of interesting scenarios. Definitely, it started as a way to do telemetry, and the product actually started as 4 engineers from the Power BI team wanted to move, like they were in the process of moving Power BI from being a desktop software to being a cloud service. And they needed a way to understand what their software is doing in the cloud. So they created this repository for the telemetry. It's coming from the Power BI servers. And that was very useful for developers to understand how their service and how their components are doing. That repository was very quickly adopted by every other Microsoft technology. And today, it's only at Microsoft. It is ingesting about 17 petabytes of data per day from telemetry from Office and Windows, SQL, Azure, and practically every other Microsoft, including LinkedIn, etc. So it was a grassroots delivered project that took off incredibly, and surprisingly, it still keeps growing, almost doubling every year.
It was developed as an internal tool.
An internal tool.
Now
completely.
you've decided to. Just to backtrack a little bit, are you able to even talk about the genesis of it as an internal tool?
Yeah. So this is like, in a sense, the fact that that team came from Power BI. The knowledge on how to build column stores and how to run analytics on large sets of data was the bread and butter of that team. So what they did is they took it and built it in a distributed way, and in a way that's financially feasible, running on commodity hardware, and made it available on even larger sets of data.
And this came from a need to query all that data that was being ingested from
generated by the service,
Microsoft telemetry products.
It started as 4 engineers from the Power BI team, like trying to create a mechanism to know what their new cloud service is doing, because they no longer had access to the DLLs and executables running on the test box under the table. Now it became something that's running in the cloud and in production, and a lot of instances of it. So the ability to deal with all that telemetry was a big challenge. And once that starts serving Power BI as a way to analyze their service activity, it was adopted very quickly.
Right. Okay, cool.
In 2017, we understood that capability is actually very, very valuable for products in this space. And the first product that adopted that technology was Azure Monitor Application Insights, that took that and re-platformed their application performance and health monitoring product on top of Kusto, as it was called at the time. That was a huge change because the power that technology brought to those users, they immediately fell in love. And that product started picking up. And when I talk to customers, they are telling me, oh, so this is the team that has built the query engine behind Application Insight. And tell these guys that they did a marvelous job. So I'm getting this feedback without even poking for it. So afterwards, the technology was adopted also as part of other analytical products like Azure Monitor Log Analytics and Time Series Insights and the Connected Vehicles platform. And Azure PlayFab is now using it as the analytical backbone. And new products from Microsoft are also picking that up, including the new Dynamics 365, Dynamics 365 product insights. And the fun thing is that the new security products from Microsoft, Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, and Azure Sentinel, are all built on that technology as well. So that's one cycle that we're closing, going back to security analytics. And now all these products are actually running on top of Kusto.
That's so cool.
Another interesting cycle is, I told you, we closed the team working on information retrieval because we didn't know how users would define what they wanted to do. So the work on Cortana was actually exactly that, understanding what users do and understanding how to generate the definition of what they care about as AI models in order to better filter the internet.
That's going back to your original work from the 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now to these days, the challenge that I'm enjoying is working with a lot of Microsoft partners and customers and Microsoft field, our sales force, which is built of incredibly talented people. And taking this to market, really changing how people are using data. Because at Microsoft, it really transformed how engineering works at Microsoft. And actually not only engineering. We are seeing like content owners and marketing managers and even VPs and executives use the product to actually themselves query data, get answers to the questions, and almost a fourth of the employees at Microsoft are using this to write queries and get answers to their question, which is incredible. It's not something that was there like 6 years ago, and we see this as a incredible transformation. So this is where I am today.
Awesome. That's an incredible story. Now we're up to Azure Data Explorer. Manoj was going to talk about the time series side of things. Are you able to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So with time series, there are multiple aspects of like how to handle time series. And the first thing is like how to aggregate it and present simple dashboards on like what's the temperature now, what's the pressure now, etc. But beyond that, there is a need for deep analytics over time series. And the interesting aspects in analytics of a time series is that you want to see reasons in these like long series of data. You want to see correlation between time series. You want to understand the reasons on why things behave as they are and not differently. And we've seen a lot of traction in running time series analytics, deep analytics of a time series, finding the differences between periods, finding the reasons for phenomena. And we are seeing adoption both by the Microsoft platforms that are providing solutions in the time series space, like the Connected Vehicles platform, like Time Series Insight, which is the Microsoft product for industrial IoT and IoT that comes with full solution out of the box for IoT development. But also with large customers that are building IoT platforms themselves. And I can name some names. For example, Ecolab is one provider of water technologies that is using Azure Data Explorer for deep time series analysis. We have Bueller, which is a fascinating engineering company that is targeting, their slogan is from field to fork. All the technologies coming, taking materials from the farmers and making products out of them. We integrated ADX into their machinery that does pastime chocolate.
Sorry, for people that aren't listening, what does ADX stand for?
Azure Data Explorer. Sorry about that.
Part of my
that is the shortcut at this point. So that is Azure Data Explorer. So the Bueller actually are using Azure Data Explorer in order to deal with telemetry that's coming from the pasta and chocolate making machines. And you would be surprised how much telemetry a chocolate making machine is generating every second. Just the acidity, the temperature of every component. And they're using it in order to provide dashboards and time series analysis for their customers. And we're seeing more and more adoption for this type of analysis, including the one that I'm showcasing this week with Bosch on wrong way driving prevention.
And this may be a very ignorant question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. But when you're doing time series in ADX, are you regressing? Say you want to regress on the temperature in this room or whatever. can you regress? Are you just using a pure one variable, or can you regress over multiple features to achieve the temperature?
So let me talk about a little bit about time series. There is a difference between time series and logs. The interesting difference is that time series are typically handled in fixed
Intervals?
In fixed intervals.
Yep.
And once the data is organized, and it can come from multiple sources, it can be organized or not organized, but Azure Data Explorer allows you to organize the data as a time series, fixing the intervals, and then once the time series are aligned and they are correlatable, you can actually correlate multiple sensors and run algorithms in Python, in R, or the algorithms that are part of the products out of the box in order to understand phenomena and understand correlations between different things. So you can definitely leverage multiple features that are happening at the same time in order to
regress on a single temperature or whatever.
And to do prediction and anomaly detection on these kind of things.
Cool. A couple other questions and then we can wrap this up. How have you found your experience so far at Ignite?
That's a wonderful question. Ignite is huge. It's insane. You walk from one conference to one lab for 15 minutes and it just doesn't end.
Getting your steps in for the day, that's for sure.
Yeah, so the ability to meet people from all industries, from all roles, from partners, from field, from very different customers, talk to them about what they are interested in and what they care about is an extremely rewarding experience. And I find that I learn something new from every conversation with every person that's walking around. And so I enjoyed our lab session that we ran like a couple of days ago, and I'm looking forward for the session that I'm going to run in 2 days. And this is always exciting and very enriching.
Cool. And I guess just to wrap it up, is there anything else anyone else you'd like to reach out to? Anything you'd like to mention before we wrap this up?
Yeah, so data science and machine learning, AI, is definitely changing the world. And making it real is a fascinating journey. I'm super excited that I'm a part of that journey and touching so many different aspects of this and working with so many people that are hard at work in actually making this a reality. And in the same time, doing this in a human-friendly and human-respectful way so that it doesn't interfere with human rights and with human independence and individualism and like doing this in an ethical way, practically, is I think is our challenge for the next 10, 15 years.
Completely agree. I was literally about to say 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Uri, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for taking the time to record this.
Thank you, Paul, very much.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Thanks.